Welcome to FACEHAMMER episode 87. It's me, Russ the Face. I'm joined by the full FACEHAMMER crew for yet another episode of the FACEHAMMER podcast. So I hope everyone's doing well today.
Yeah.
And we've basically just want to touch on that this will be a YouTube video. You might be watching it on YouTube, but then that makes no sense. But also, we did release the last show on YouTube. Unfortunately, we had some audio issues, so the quality should be better on this. Despite Les's best efforts, he couldn't rescue my derpiness in how I recorded it. So, third time lucky.
I was polishing it. Yeah, I was polishing a turd.
And that was just to touch up our faces. So, you know, this is 90% of the battle. Okay, so... we're going to talk today. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction, but before we'll get into the main show. And the main show will be, we've each taken a Grand Alliance and we've written a list under the new GHB 2020 points with the FAQs in mind that have just dropped for a match play event that would be running the standard pack out the back of the book. But before we get into that, we just want to say that we have talked about FACEHAMMER GT. And our plans this year, and what we'd like to do is run a online event, and we will release more details soon, but essentially we're going to run the FACEHAMMER painting competition that we run at the event, and also the army painting competition, but extend it worldwide and not have an entry. Yes, we're to that. Worldwide. Is that in Step Brothers? Like it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Prestige worldwide.
Prestige worldwide.
FACEHAMMER worldwide. So we're gonna do that, and there'll be free entry. We'll have some more announcements on how to enter and what to do coming soon. But the plan is to do something online and have a kind of hangout and chat and paint and hobby marathon, and perhaps with some content in there and listener questions, probably via Discord, but we haven't decided yet.
Haven't decided that yet. If anyone's doing anything pre-prep wise though, we should probably decide a hashtag now. So like hashtag FHGT
worldwide
2020.
Worldwide. Yeah, FHGT worldwide. Yeah. Do that.
Just decided it.
Right.
So yeah, we'll
and
do
also
that.
send all your stepbrother gifts to Terry.
Yeah.
Send it to all of us. We're all fans. It's fine.
Yeah.
So FACEHAMMER GT worldwide. I like that. That's good. 2020
worldwide
will be. We'll announce more information soon. We've also got some videos from last year, and we've got some great pictures that Avarice took. So we're going to put those videos up finally. That's my fault. And then, also probably do a show where we talk through the painting competition entrance that podiumed and finalised and won awards, just so people get an idea of how our thought process is and stuff, because we would judge the competition like we would do at the event basically. So we'll give you more details. We'll probably put some guidance on taking photos and trying to make sure that, you know, we don't want to get like billions of pictures, so don't start sending stuff in now. We will tell you how to submit. And there'll be a limit on the number of photos you can send, so you'd have to, you know, it'll be like 1 or 2 shots of the model in a certain format, and we'll put a little guide up on like our advice on taking photos. Anyway,
some good guides out there, aren't there? If you look,
there is. We'll probably just link to one because we're lazy.
There's 2 that I can think of that I go to as my go-to, like, you know, my reference point every time when I take photos. Still can't manage to take a good photo, but those guides are really good. I think it's just me. So,
and we had the FAQs dropped yesterday. So it was interesting to get the popcorn out and look at some of the Twitterverse.
Yeah, social media. Like, I just didn't go on social media yesterday.
I didn't.
I was just like, it's going to be a lot of people who are passionate about certain things in their armies talking vehemently online about a thing that matters massively to them.
And who wants that? I mean, why would anyone tune into people
who
espousing their opinions on YouTube?
Yeah, who wants to spend time listening to people talk about their opinions?
I know, it's one of those where, it's like, But yeah, I think like sometimes it's how you go about these sorts of things. I think the Twitterverse, from what I can tell, wasn't as bad as I was expecting.
No, I didn't see a lot. I mean, there's a lot of sort of. I think a lot of it is tongue in cheek anyway. Like people almost play up to it. So
a lot of the points go up and down in a way that barely changes a list as well. Like it's a kind of a redistribution. So for example, the army that I'll talk about later in the show, loads of things went up by 10 points, loads of things went down by 10 points, and the net result is 10 points different over rather than 1980 it's 1990 or something. So
generally it only really affects an army if you've taken one thing lots of times and that thing's been adjusted. But to be honest, the points aren't there to be a sledgehammer. It's meant to be like a subtle touch, you know.
You don't want to invalidate anything, do you? Like, you know, I think if you spend a lot of money and time and hours painting an army and then the points sway you've
changed by like a third or something.
It's like you're just going to upset people. So I think like a gentle touch is quite good with the points, regardless of whether the wider reaching community thinks that or not. You know, I still think it's probably the best way of approaching it.
Yeah, and so we'll put some details out about that on a YouTube show. So we're going to do a little show after this that will just be on YouTube, which will talk about the FAQs, the changes, and what we think will affect the biggest sort of effects of that. So we'll just have a little bit of a chat about it as an after show. So we're not going to cover too much of that here. So finally, we just want to say to people that, you know, we do have some merchandise which we haven't really plugged for ages.
Pretty dice.
Yeah, we do have some dice, but we also have these like really pretty paint racks which have got the FACEHAMMER logo on, but they basically
we're all sat here surrounded by these, like they're all behind
GW paint.
Behind
you can get them for Vallejo, and there's some drawers and stuff. I use them all across the top of my desk, so I've got like 12 of them, but they're pretty good. So I'd say if you want to support us and you need a paint storage solution, you can go from our website, click on the merchandise, or go to Element Games and just type in FACEHAMMER, and it will take you to a listing of all the stuff that we've got. We've got some dice still, so we've got some different colours. I think we've got the white and teal, the teal and steel, blue, purple, and gold dice
they're all
as
lovely.
well. They're all really nice.
I like teal and steel. Teal and steel.
Yeah, they're good. So it's a nice mix to have those and the white and teal ones. So they make them quite a nice set.
Yeah.
If you all snap a picture of our desks, we could also show people exactly how we've laid out the paint racks, because there's a lot of choice, right? You can store spray cans or not. You can put in GW paints, you can put in Vallejo paints, you can go for more drawers, you can put in actual toppers now, so you can have a flat shelf on top for like things you're working on, or my glue and stuff that doesn't fit is across the top, and you can spray them black and then put a little picture of Les on the front of it too.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I've got some spray black, some not spray black, because I run out of time, and I could be. It's like most things unpainted. Tomlin's got one, but his one looks a bit more bad than Byron's.
Tomlin's got one that he's got stuck on a black sun, hasn't he? Like, the purple sun or something.
I think Maudsley's got
we
one
can thank
as well.
Tom Maudsley for that. Yeah.
Most trolls I thank Tom Maudsley for, to be honest. Anyway, like I think the guy's got like a PhD in bullying me, so it's like.
Yeah, so I think that's all of our introductions and start of the show stuff done. So
what are we talking about today then?
Well, as mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about the list that we've written. So we'll get into the main show now and talk about the list that we've come up with from the GHP 2020 for each allegiance. So I thought I would try and write a death list, as that's my bag, and I actually pre-case this with struggling quite a lot actually to write a list. I looked at the OBR changes and I was trying to write an OBR list, but I just ended up back where I started with my Catacross list, and I just thought that's going to be really boring if I say my list is exactly the same as what it was before, and all of the elite units that went down, I didn't take them because they're not Mortek Guard or Catacross. So I thought I won't do that. Then I looked at Nighthaunt and Flesh Eaters. And Flesh Eaters, I think you can write some decent lists around the Royal Mordant formation, and Crypt Horrors have changed. And I thought I could do it.
Like the distribution of them. of their points. I think it's made things much more logical now. You're not pushed in one direction as much.
Yeah, I still don't think they've had enough reductions, and I think the Terrorgeists and Zombie Dragons are too pricey now, especially with the artifact changes and the changes to Unholy Vitality and things like that. So I think they're just overcosted. They're over like 400 points, and you look at some of the greater demons in Chaos, and they're not even close to that. And I just, for me, I looked at it and go, they're just not as good. So I then went straight into Legion, and I was trying to write a Legion list, and I actually was looking at Soul Blight quite heavily. But I just realised that Blood Knights are just a bad version of Kavalos Death Riders, so I just thought if I was going to write a cavalry army, I'm not going to take Soul Blight. And although they've got some interesting artifacts, and there's a formation in there, which is the Castants of the Blood Keep, which is quite good. And you could give them all +2 move and fly. So I think you can write a decent Soul Blight list, but I just didn't have the points. I just found that it was like 2 vampires and like 15 Blood Knights and some Vargheists, and that was it.
One of the difficulties of writing a Soul Blight list with Blood Knights in it, at least, is if you run them in Legion of Blood with Neferata, all of them get 1 more attack, which is a big deal. Obviously, flying in +2 move is a big deal, but if you run them with Neferata, everyone having 4 attacks instead of 3 on the charge, that's absolutely huge.
Yeah, then you've got I did exactly what you just said. I basically started thinking it's better to run Blood with Blood Knights. I think the biggest thing, not getting the move and the fly, is pretty big. But essentially, I ended up with a rather unusual list, which I'm going to put up now, which is awesome. Legion of the Night. So here is my army list. It is basically MANNFRED, and he's the general, because he has to be. I've given him Pinions as his spell. I'll talk about that in a bit. Then I've got a White King with the Shard of Night artifact. And what that does is -1 to hit from shooting. A Necromancer with Morbid Egg's Claw, which it basically allows him to not move or fight, which he's not good anyway. And he gets every wizard within 12 gets +2 to cast. So it allows you to push through Van Hels or Pinions if you really need to. And he's also got Overwhelming Dread. I think, in retrospect, because he's only get 1 spell and you're probably always going to be casting Van Hels, you probably want to put Overwhelming Dread on MANNFRED, but it does shut down your Alpha Strike a little bit. I'll talk about that in a minute. But then 40 Skeleton Warriors with Spears, 40 Skeleton Warriors with... I've got Blades, but you can have Blades or Spears, it doesn't really matter. And then 10 Skeletons, and 2 units of 6 Vargheists, and they are in the formation the Nightfall Pact. Now the Nightfall Pact is the entire army except for the 2 characters, the White King and the Necromancer. And what it's...
That's a weird formation, isn't it?
It is a weird formation, but what it does is it makes your army a free drop. Now there is a variant of this where you reduce 1 Vargheist unit to 3, drop the White King and the Necromancer, and take another Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, and it's a 2-drop army. But I'll talk about why I didn't go that route in a sec. But essentially what you do is you've got, with Legion of Night gives you a couple things. So one, it means all Death Rattle units that are in your territory are +1 save. It allows you, before the game starts, to take 3 units and put them in reserve. And then they can come on from the board edge at the end of your movement phase, 9 away, within 6 of a board edge. So it allows you to protect MANNFRED and the 2 units of Vargheist, or use them aggressively, whilst you still put 90 models on the table that have +1 armor save, that they're within range of the White King, so you can use a command ability that can +1 attack. They're within range of a Death Hero, so they get another bonus. I think it's an extra attack as well. And then they get to extra attacks for numbers. It might be reroll to hit, actually. I don't know. They get some bonus for a hero being nearby, which escapes me. But basically, they get buffed by the heroes, and obviously the Necromancer can make them pile an attack twice. But, Skeleton's going from a 5-up save against no rend, or no save against rend, to a 4-up save, or a 6-up, means them a lot more survivable. And also the Necromancer and White King can return models with the Deathless Invocation. And then you've also got the Grave Sites as well. So you could even put 40 skeletons for using the Legion of Night ability into like the night with, and keep MANNFRED on the table, because you come on at the end of the movement phase, so you wouldn't get to use the hero phase with MANNFRED, and MANNFRED gets an aura which allows him, all death units within 15, to re-roll ones to hit and to wound. So essentially you've got a massive blob of bodies which can sit at objectives that are battle line, can actually bully people off because they're quite aggressive, but you've also got this aggressive element of MANNFRED and the two Vargeists. Now what the formation does, it does two things. One, it allows you to re-roll the Deathly Invocation from MANNFRED, which only affects the skeletons, is not a big deal. The other thing is that it allows the Vargeists to get +1 attack on the charge. So they're already freeze and freeze damage 2, and they're quite fast. So you basically charge them in, and then if they're within range of MANNFRED, they're getting reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound. So they're pretty effective, and they are rend with damage 2. They are a bit fragile, and you can't heal them, but you can keep them off the table. So if you play somebody who's going to Alpha Strike you, then you can essentially set them off the table and be like, well, you can Alpha Strike my 90 skeletons with the death saves from the Necromancer and the White King in the middle of them, and you can't touch MANNFRED, and you can't touch the Vargeists because they're not on the table. And then also, because the MANNFRED can come on at the end of the movement phase, if they wipe out a unit of skeletons, you can put him on the end of the movement phase within a grave marker and then put the 40 skeletons back on.
Unless you put your grave markers in probably weird places, doesn't it? Because you don't have to be able to reach there with your vanilla move. You can pop up from a board edge and then be like raising something behind someone. Or
well, that's the other thing as well. You could actually set them up from the grave marker from using the ability. I think that's end of move as well. I'd have to double check it. I know it's been FAQ'd a lot and it's been a while since I played Legion, but essentially it's an army that it can deploy on the table. It's got some speed, so you can use pinions on MANNFRED. I mean, he's movement 16. He'll go up to movement 21. He's a little bit fragile, but you don't really want to launch him into something. But if you wanted to get to an objective late game that's got a small unit on, it just gives you that extra, because you could eventually be movement 26 if you rolled high enough.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, you're quite low drop as well, so that'll protect you against alpha strikes and stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's got an alpha strike of its own, because you can, depending on how they've deployed, you might better come on from the board edge and go for some big charges early on. And then your skeletons can blob onto the objective. So while they're fighting your vampire Vargeists and stuff that's all like blobbing around the board, they actually, I mean, you could keep them off the table for the first turn anyway, just move the skeletons onto objectives and absorb the double turn.
You're not restricted to dropping them in any particular turn, are you? No. They can just come on as long as there's space.
And MANNFRED doesn't really need to be on the table, so you can keep them off the table and say, well, have your double turn at me. I'll go first, or whatever. You have your double turn, and then I'll bring them on then, and then I'll have my double turn. But with all the vampires flapping in your face.
What does the skeleton banner do again? Don't they have a slightly more reliable charge, or
it means they charge? No, I think it's that, or it's -1 bravery. I think that might be the musician, but
okay,
I can't remember. I think the banners depends on the unit. So, like, I think the Blood Knights have it that you guarantee a 6.
Yeah, something. I think skeletons might have that too.
I think they do. But
yeah. You definitely go with spears for the skeletons, wouldn't you? Especially with the potential of
they're not as reliable hitting, but yeah, generally, I think, because of the depth. But you can go out in a big long line and still be. They've got a 1-inch reach, so you could be too deep. So
that'd look cool on the table as well. It'd look like an actual nice army as opposed to MANNFRED and his 15 dogs for battle line and the rest of the stuff. So like it actually looks like a shambling undead horde, I would imagine.
Yeah, I wanted to. I tried to write a list that had 2 elements, so a hammer and anvil, a bit like classic Warhammer, and then I also wanted to play into the aesthetic of death of having using the things that Legion of Night benefited. And I think the skeletons getting +1 armor in their own territory is massive. And you get an extra, because I got a formation, I get to have the 2 artifacts. Making sure you can push Van Hels through is massive in the right turn. And then you've also got the ability of the White King's got a command ability that gives them +1 attack as well. So I think you can get skeletons with 4 attacks if there's 30 of them or more, and then you can get them on freeze to hit, re-rolling 1s, and then I think it's 4s to wound, re-rolling 1s. So it's just a lot of dice.
Yeah, it really is. Van Hels is until your next hero phase, isn't it? Or
It's
is it
the
in the
next
next
combat phase. So
okay.
it's offensive really than anything else. But to be fair, he's still got overwhelming dread. That's the only change I'd probably make, is change that up, and maybe you want to give MANNFRED a heal, maybe you want to give him like a more wound output. There's loads of little stuff you can tweak around the edges. You could put the White King on a horse, and she probably would. You might drop the Necromancer and the White King and then put in like a Coven Throne. So there's lots of little changes you can make, but I think the fact that the White King and the Necromancer make the skeletons infinitely better, and you need more heroes, because I think you need at least 3 especially in the new missions. So I think this list is really good again in most missions. Where it's going to struggle is when it needs like MANNFRED to go out and like boss an objective and hold it. So it's gonna struggle in those kind of missions. But then if you manage to get a unit of skeletons with a Necromancer in the middle still on an objective, you're never getting him off. So it's just as effective.
You bubble
really.
wrap, don't you?
Yeah,
because you've got the bodies to bubble wrap on those hero missions. So
and with grave sites you can do stuff like you don't have to rely on the infantry moving into position. You can run the hero up the table, and then you can use the grave site to deploy the unit that you set up in the graves, and they just basically bubble wrap around that objective. So you can, and because you're low drop, you can play for that. You can just go, well, I'm going to guarantee the board's position. So I think it's a really strong scenario army, because I don't think there's much stuff. I mean, you could smash 40 skeletons off, but then you're going to have the command ability to bring them back on as long as you set MANNFRED up in the grave sites in a logical place. And I think you set them up for that kind of play rather than healing. So it'd be an interesting army to play with.
I think it'd be good in like hero missions, like 3 places and stuff, wouldn't it? Because if you outdrop your opponent, get MANNFRED directly onto one of the objectives, and then have the gravesite nearby and bubble wrap him with the skeletons there. You've got the movement then, especially in the way the new missions are set up, how far apart those objectives are for like foot slogging heroes. It means that you can get one of those objectives early doors and then work on getting the next one.
Well, that's why the White King would be on a horse, because it makes him movement 10 or 12. So you'd put him on a horse every day. It doesn't cost any more points. And he's got a 3-up armor save. But he's Death Rattle as well. So he's got a 2-up save in your territory.
Pretty good first turn, isn't it?
It's not bad, is it? And also he's -1 a hit from shooting. So he's a little bit vulnerable, but I think mortal wounds is the problem if you play anything that could do mortals to him. But that was the list, and I thought the Vargai Snake, a nice strike unit. You might, after play, decide that they don't do enough and they're not really good, and then you drop the formation, you drop the Vargeist, but the army becomes a very different animal. But I was trying to write a death list that could compete in the missions. But
Your Vargeists, they benefit from Van Hels, don't they? You can cast it on any...
No, I don't think so. Because they're not... There's certain types of units you can cast it on. I don't think they're one of them. So.
Okay. So I was going to say you could run them as a 9 to benefit better from that, but 2 6s makes loads of sense then in that case.
I mean, yeah, you could run a 9 and a 3 if you wanted to, because that might change your mind about what you put off the table. Because the Legion of Night, you could set up 40 skellies, the 10 skellies and the 6, one unit of Vargeist, and put the 9 on the table, put 3 off, and then put 9 on behind a wall of skellies with both characters and MANNFRED, and have that deployed, and have the other stuff as your second wave.
Yeah.
But I quite like...
Really annoying.
It almost turns it into a little bit of a Flesh Eaters army with the way you get things coming on for the edges. It's very weird, but I quite like it. I don't know, for me it seems like it would be interesting to play with. I don't think it's the most effective death army, but it would be fun. So,
and it would look great. Les is right. You've got your big boy, medium fleshy things, and then loads of dead things with spears. Your wound count's crazy as well. You're on more than 150 wounds.
Yeah, it's 159. Yeah.
Average wounds is like 110, and yours come back, and some of them have got boosted saves and whatever.
Yeah, you'd have to... one of the things I would kind of hate is rolling all the dice for the skeletons and casualty removal and all that, but hopefully it grinds your opponent into boredom, so you do just concede.
Start making mistakes because I'm bored, yeah.
No, well, that's why I've got the other element to it, because I think you need to have something that can do damage and can go out and get objectives and kill stuff. And it might be the fact that you tar pit with the skellies, and then you come on with the vampires and you sweep across the board.
I think
it plays into the IP, doesn't it? It's like you've got your skeletons holding stuff, and then the rest of it, like they're not the heavy hitters; they're the guys that pin the units.
No, but you will die to them if you get into a drawn-out battle because the sheer amount of damage.
And they don't. It's a battle of attrition, right? That's always the things with units that come back. If you've got your 5 liberators going into 20 skeletons and they kill 7 and then 3 come back, and it really makes a big difference. I think it plays to your strength for us because you've got, if people know what they're doing, you've got the threat of all the attacks from the skeletons as well as fast-moving, flexible stuff with drops. But if people don't know so much what they're doing, they're probably going to think that the skeletons are resilient but don't hit hard, and you can lure them into something and then hit them with 40 guys with spears twice that are hitting on 2s and wounding on 4s, which is enough to wipe out most things in the game that don't have high arm.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need the command points early game if you keep MANNFRED off the table, which allows you to stock up later on for the attack spell and MANNFRED's bubble. But yeah, that's what I would take if I could just have it and don't have to paint it. But that's that was the death list I come up with.
Skeleton Horde. Done.
Yeah.
It's not though, is it?
That's cool.
Then we all know that's not true.
No.
It's the mold lines.
Yeah.
It's like when you're there scraping all the spears and sticking them all together, and you're like, I've done 90 of these. And then you play a game of it and go, that wasn't very good. I should just take Cannon Cross. But there's an interesting Death Army if someone wants to give that a go. We'll probably put a bundle up on Element if someone wants to have a go at buying that and giving it a go. And I think you can get the Skellies and the Mortark in one box in a start collecting.
Yeah.
So we'll put a bundle up for that if you fancy giving that a go. And if you do, I'd be great to see your progress and hear how you get on with it. And be happy to talk about tweaks and stuff. And then you can tell me I'm wrong and it's rubbish. But no refunds.
Let us know your thoughts. If you change one thing, if you don't like the formation, if you've got suggestions as a way to improve it, then by all means let us know. And if you want to build one and paint one and send it to Russ, he won't say no either.
I'm not going to do that unless you want to pay a stupid amount of money. No, this is a starting point. So this would be, I've not played any games, so you might play 2 games and realise there's some simple changes to make which make a big difference, but that'll come down to your play style. But there's my General's Handbook 2020 death list.
So I decided to do a Stormcast from my order list for the sort of like the General's Handbook 2020 listing that Russ challenged us with, essentially. I wanted to do something that I knew, like if I was going to take it to a tournament, something that I actually knew inside out, really, but also wanted to take advantage of the fact that the points have dropped on stuff.
Quite a lot of stuff in that book.
Yeah, I mean, if I was looking back at the standard, what we've always called the TM build, like essentially I could take the TM build and I get 140 points if I did that. So, it's quite a significant drop. I wanted to change it up a little bit though. And so like I based it roughly on the build that I was taking predominantly, not last year, like the year before, the one that I came third at the heat with. So it's essentially, there's no storm host or anything like that, and it's quite a high drop list. And also there's not really any sort of like how armies have like a lot of command point structure, like how they need those command points for special abilities. That really doesn't apply to this list because I've not the general's the Stardrake, and he's not got a command ability that affects anyone but himself, essentially, because it's reroll wounds for the dragons. But yeah, so the list is well, as you can see on the screen, it's a Stardrake with Staunch Defender and the Mirror Shield and Keen Clawed, which is sort of like the standard kind of build that you get on a Stardrake. So +1 armor save if he doesn't charge with an aura, mirror shields, minus this to shoot him, and keen claw is any 6s do rend 3 on the dragon. I've got a Castellan, which is to buff the Stardrake again, which combos nicely with Staunch Defender if you've not seen it before. So Stardrake's a 3+ rerolling 1s. If he doesn't charge, he's a 2+ rerolling 1s. With the Castellan buff, he's a 1+ rerolling 1s. Now, obviously, you can't have a 1+ because a 1's always a fail, but it just mitigates like that rend. The Heraldor for run and charge. And this is why it changed up a little bit because normally I put a Relictor in sort of like my old list, and I thought, well, I'll put the Knight Vexler in because it allows you to, whilst you've got run and charge with the Heraldor, the Vexler gives you a reroll charge ability, which is really good, which comes down to the unit types that we'll get to in a second. And I'll give him the Pennant of the Stormbringer, which is essentially the teleport banner that we used to see back in the early days of Age of Sigmar everywhere. I went for a Knight Incantor, just because he's such a utility piece as well with, the auto dispel, and he's also got some mortal wound output from when he smashes his vials in combat, and get the Stormcast law's quite good, so I'll give him Stormclaw, which is kind of like a mini Rain of Stars. Which is
also pretty survivable as far as wizards go. Wow. Like for the points, that guy's amazing.
Well, that's why I've got the Dias Arcanum as an endless spell, because one of the problems with this is that it's not actually that maneuverable. Once it drops, or if it's on the table, you've not got much movement. So with the Dias Arcanum, it basically the Incantor gets +1 armor save, so he's a 2+ save wizard then, and he can fly, gives him like a disc, so it's kind of cool, and gets, I believe it's an additional spell cast, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Standard battle line, 2 units Adjudicators and a Liberator unit, just because Adjudicators going down are really good. I know a lot of people out there don't rate them, but I've always found them consistency over the game. They just do a really, really, really good job.
That range never changes, like 29-inch threat range, isn't it?
29-inch threat range, yeah, all the time.
Just amazing.
It's. I think you could definitely, considering the damage threat that they've got compared to a unit of Liberators. I mean, I know you're paying, 50 points more, but I do think that they're worth those 50 points over the course of the battle. One of the things I always used to do if I was in the mirror match with Stormcast was take out the Adjudicators early on, because they're the things that chip away over the course of the game. Same as if when I was playing Sylvaneth, it would be like I'd take out the Tree Revenants, because they're the things that win the Sylvaneth player of the game back in the early days before the second book came out. I've then gone sort of like a unit of 10 Evocators. I was toying with putting Gavriel, the Surcharge guy, in the list just to be able to make their charge more reliable. So they drop from the sky, 9-inch charge, spend command points, and increase that, the ability to charge things +3. But I thought about it and I was just like, I actually think that even though that's probably a little bit more competitive, I wanted the Evocators in this because I see them performing the role that the Fulminators used to perform in my old list. So the dragon obviously is quite hard to kill, very resilient. He is sort of like my anvil that moves, and then the Evocators would be the hammer. So this dragon goes in, pins a unit, and then the Evocators will drop from the sky, hopefully in range of the Vexler banner. So 9 with a reroll makes them quite reliable. It's not ideal, it's still probably 50-50-ish. And the dragon pins them in place. Hopefully then at that point, if they do fail the charge, then it's not that big a deal because the dragon's going to stay there and like hold them. And then I've got the pennant if I need to redeploy them or the dragon, because it just picks a unit and just teleports it anywhere you like on the table. So I can redeploy the Evocators once they're down if I need to. And I then included, these were initially Celestial Ballistas. But like a friend suggested when I was talking about it, Martin Moran suggested that Shadow Warriors provide a sort of like a similar role but different. So obviously it's bodies on the table, they're more flexible, it's consistent shooting, and that pop-up ability again that because everything they've got on their war scroll is brilliant. It allows me to be a little bit more flexible. I thought. It's overall I think it could. I think it'll be like 4 out of 5 wins maybe, unless I can run into. It's still going to fall foul of the always strike first armies, and anything with like massive amounts of armor saves. It'd be interesting to see how it would fare against OBR and stuff, because they've got really good armor save. The dragon's got really good armor save.
Should do really well against OBR because they don't, particularly with Petrifix being less prevalent, you won't see the command ability for Rend because people might move to Mortis Praetorian or Static Lords, and I think don't underestimate how good evocators are against OBR, Mortec Guard. They just absolutely destroy them. So
plus the shooting as well, like with the just the constant shooting, you're not re-rolling that save in the shooting phase, are you? Especially with the changes to Petrifix. I mean, like you said, I don't see people taking that going forward. Maybe
I think you'll still see it. Yeah. You'll still see it.
Crematorium, sorry Russ. I think Crematorium is more of a, or whatever it's called, is more of an issue if you're facing that, because then when things die on a 5+, they do a mortal wound, and that's one of the weaknesses. I mean, the Star Drake's got no mortal wound protection.
No mortal wound protection. It never. So even when I played it before, it never really had any mortal wound protection. When I used to run the, I can't remember the
Ignax's Scales.
Yeah.
No, I never used to take Ignax. It was what was the Ram Beast one? The one where it banks his wounds back on and then modified armor. So,
the Pellet.
Yeah, the
Shardfist.
Yeah, that's it. Shardfist Pound.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figured that out there at the moment, I don't know how it would fare against certain things. I was thinking about like what I would expect to see. Tzeentch, if they're still about, is going to be a lot of shooting. The -2 to hit on the dragon's going to make it hard. There's not a lot of Rend. It's, and also like I've played the list a lot in this semi sort of guise, so I think I'd be okay with it.
You've got a lot of off-table drops as well. I mean, your entire army can go, your Stormcast, every other unit can go off the table, and then you've got 2 units of Shadow Warriors to add to that, which is really good. I think the other thing they add is that with list, you've got multiple sources of very flexible, far-range specific shooting. So you've got Rain of Stars, you got a spell that is like Rain of Stars, from what I recall.
Yeah.
Then you've got a couple units of Adjudicators, just solid. And then adding the Shadow Warriors to that really makes a big difference, because if you can drop them into Rain, where they've got the ability to choose something else, although you don't have to, you get +1 to wound and +1 to hit. But what that gets around is Lookout Sir really nicely. So let's say you've damaged something, there's something you really need to kill. He's given a buff to a unit, or he's a utility piece or whatever. You can do a couple of wounds with this thing. If that doesn't work, try and do a couple of wounds with this thing. That's just in your hero phase. Shoot him with 1 unit Adjudicators. Okay, 1 wound left. I'm going to shoot 3 of the Shadow Warriors at him. He's dead now. We're good. It just allows you to exactly allocate enough wounds without too much, without too little, and pick apart your opponent's army before you then go in, and the Evocators are just mega at that. They're also they're quite a threat. You've not put a realm down. Did you consider that?
No, because obviously with the new realm rules and stuff, it didn't really make sense. And I figured that all of the tools that I need, personally, I think are in the Stormcast book. I mean, I think the list shreds infantry. Like if you've got, one of the things that a lot of people forget about with the Star Drake is that whilst Rain of Stars is mostly your go-to, Rolling Thunderhead is also really, really good against it, like massed horde infantry, because it's like roll dice for each model in the unit, and on 6 it takes a mortal wound. So it's that plus the evocators plus the continual shooting. And the dragon's quite good at fighting, hordes.
Because did evocators go up, or did they stay the same? Because the retributors come down, didn't they?
Retributors come down. I was really tempted with retributors because they perform a very similar role. But I think
I guess you don't get much for the 40 points, do you?
No, I could have taken Endless Spell. I was tempted. I tried to see whether I could get Emerald Life Swarm, because again, without the Relictor in the list, the Life Swarm then would heal the dragon, because you've not got the extra D3 heal from the Relictor's healing lightning.
I think that's the only thing that I kind of would want is the Relictor, because it gives you another way to move a unit around as well, doesn't it?
Translocation, that was the it was that or the Incantor, in my opinion. I mean, I think the games that I need that auto dispel.
I think the Incantor's a better choice, but you'd want both really. But you can't.
Yeah, if I could fit them all, I want a Castellan, a Harald, or a Vexler. I want 6 heroes.
You could drop a unit of Shadow Warriors and have points for it.
5 heroes, isn't it? I think there was a cap on
6.
Cap on 5 heroes.
6
heroes.
Oh, is
it 6? Is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I could drop it, and it's not a bad check. Could do that. I think I'm strong in
having 2 units of Shadow Warriors is good though, because it means
It's a lot better than one.
you can put one down to cause harassment and keep the other one back. I don't. Do they have to go at the first turn? I don't remember what their rules are.
No, they're
Just
completely flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah. They die to anything in the game.
They die to Mortek crawlers in combat. So yeah. When I played Lover, he put them into my Mortek crawlers, but the problem is I had them spread out enough, so as soon as one was free, it could shoot them off the other one. So, but
I think it just adds flexibility. That was the whole point of it, is that it's 20 bodies that a Stormcast army rarely has.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice. Yeah,
so double the normal bodies in the Stormcast army.
Yeah.
How do realms work? Because I'm not familiar with this. What's changed with them?
You just get a artifact. So the spells, it depends what realm you're fighting in, is what you would get access to spell wise. So
okay, so
randomized.
If you're in Beast, you don't get Wild Form.
You would if you were fighting in Beasts, but not if your army's from Beasts.
Okay.
It's like before, like the game is played in a realm, and that gives everyone access to the spell and the command ability. But the artifact is the only thing that is dictated on your army list from the realm. So unless you're taking one of those artifacts, you just don't need to state a realm.
I was going to say, because Wild Form goes in that list just so well. Stormcast benefit from it pretty much more than any other army in the game, because you get +2 to your run and charge, and with a Heraldor being in most lists, what it unlocks for a Stardrake or for Evocators is kind of interesting, because you can run, make it a 6. That was a however many inches, and then charge it +2 as well.
Yeah, with a reroll if they're in range of the Vexler.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there any missions that you'd be worried about? I mean, it's quite a flexible army, so I guess not really.
I think there's missions that it's better at than others. I think it all depends what's in front of you, essentially. I think it would be good in hero missions. I think it dependent on what you play against. I don't think it wants to play anything with a huge amount of bodies that put out loads of damage. I think maybe like...
Don't face Eels, do you?
Eels, Eels are going to make it hard. You'd have to play out your skin. I think the Clan Pestilence lists, like the Skaven list with loads of Plague Monks, even with the changes to the Plague Monks that we saw, I still think that they would just get through, even though, because you're paying a premium in points for abilities on your units and the armor save, but when you're having to make that many saves, you're just going to fail, I think. So I think it'd be difficult. I think it could compete in most of the scenarios. I think it would just depend on what you're playing. Certain things make it easier than others. I do think they're a little bit behind the curve at the moment, but having the extra points allows them to allows them to compete, I think.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. I really like it.
Well, I think we've basically done them with your list, and we can move on.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll cover off destruction and chaos, or chaos and destruction, whichever way you fancy your apocalypse. And we'll talk about through Byron and Terry's list. So back in a sec. And we're back from the break, and we're going to talk about chaos. So I'll hand over to Terry, the expert in all things pusty.
Yeah, so there's no surprise here that I'm going to talk about NURGLE. I wanted to do something completely different, but enough's changed in the NURGLE book, I think, with the points, and to actually, talk about some, quite useful sort of bits with the list and potential upgrades you could do to it. So obviously the list before was the 3 Grand Cleamon Thricefold build. So obviously 2 Grand Cleamons and Rotigus, 30 Plague Bearers, 10 Plague Bearers, 10 Plague Bearers, 5 Blight Kings, and then the 3 Endless Spells, Pendulum, Spell Portal, and the Geminids. And it came in at 1980. So obviously with the new points changes, Grand Cleamons have gone down 20, Plague Bearers have gone down 10. So there's enough room in there to change it up a little bit and potentially put in Horticulus, who's obviously going to help with the summoning points throughout the game. But I went with Be'lakor just because I painted a really nice one while I've been, off of tournaments and stuff. So I want to get him on the table, and I think he's going to help a lot with some of the lists we're going to be seeing sort of going forward.
I was going to say, you painted a nice one, but he's also so good.
Yeah, I mean, I painted him for the hobby aspect, obviously.
Yeah.
But the list is still similar in that you've got the 3 Great and Clean ones and the formation, and then I've dropped the Blight Kings out, so it's 30, 10, 10 of the Plague Bearers. I've actually slotted in 9 Untamed Beasts. Obviously you get your pre-game move from these, so it should help a little bit with some of the Alpha Strike lists, like things that obviously are 1-drop that are just going to appear in front of you. But obviously Be'lakor can help with this too, because if their whole army revolves around using the bridge or something like that, they've got to, make that 5-up roll, which Be'lakor can obviously cause them to fail casting and fail moving, and every time you want to do an action, you've got to make that 5-up. So suddenly, if you're playing something like Nagash, who's going to try and teleport around, or the city's army that's going to bridge forward and just try and shoot you a lot, suddenly that battle plan might be out the window if their wizard or Nagash has just stood there doing nothing for a turn. And because it's until your next hero phase as well, if you go first, get into a good position, they take their turn.
Got low drops.
Yeah, it's 4. So you got formation 4, 5. No, it's up to about 5, 6 now. But I think you're low enough to still not be too worried. And the Untamed Beasts do give you the pre-move, so you can obviously try and block off some area that someone's going to come into. But the strength of the list is still obviously your tankiness. With the new
turn quite easily, can't you, as well?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying with Be'lakor, if you go first and then you reveal Be'lakor in their first turn and you win the turn roll, you can obviously give them the turn, and Bellacor's in effect for another turn. So it lasts until your next hero phase. So you could have 2, turns where Nagash can't do anything, for example, or you're playing Fire Slayers and they've got their big block that stood there, until turn 3. You've probably won the game because they're never going to get to this, to the objectives at that point. So you've shut them down with Be'lakor, and you really haven't had to do, too much other than just take your first turn and move.
Just for people who don't know, so Be'lakor, it's before the game you pick a unit. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then when you reveal him, you sort of say, "Oh, I'm going to use his ability." When do you do that? Is that in their go?
It's in the start. I believe it's the start of their... it might be at any point in their hero phase. I'd have to double check that. I thought it might just be the start, but
then every time they want to do something, they have to roll a 5+ to do it, right?
A 5+, yeah. So and that's move, like run, charge,
cast a spell,
everything.
Move, fight. Yep. Yeah, so it's effectively you'd have to roll. If you just wanted to move, charge, and fight, you'd have to get 3 5-ups in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite a low chance, obviously.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah. The only thing it doesn't affect is use of command points, basically.
Yeah, I suppose that's not an action, is it? It'll be in his list of what things are actually affected. I'll double check on the command point one.
Right, in your army.
Yeah, he's obviously allied in. Fits in nicely.
And just a question as well for people who don't know, because I know you use Thricefold a lot, but that's obviously got a lot of different effects that. So maybe you just want to explain what that does and why the Great and Clean ones are good,
so with
what artifacts you've gone for.
Yeah, so with the Thricefold itself, it's 3 Great and Clean ones, and that can be any combination. So you can have 3 Great and Clean ones, or 2 and Rotagus, who obviously counts as a Great and Clean one, which is what I use, because Rotagus' spell is amazing, and he's actually quite tasty in combat. They're all the same price as well, so I think you would always have Rotagus. So you get reroll ones to hit, if the Great and Clean one is within 14 inches of another Great and Clean one, and reroll ones to hit and to wound if it's in range of the other 2 Great and Clean ones. So you can sort of run them around in a little triangle and they'll all buff each other. The Plague Wind ability does D3 mortal wounds, but if it's in range of another Great and Clean one within 7, it's 2d3, And then again, if it's all three of them in range, it's 3d3. So that only affects the damage. So Plague Wind obviously does damage and heals Nurgle stuff. But it only ever does d3 heal, so you can't get a 3d3 heal running through yourself from a Plague Wind, which you don't really need once you get the wheel and the Great and Clean One's innate healing as well. So you can get 3d3, but obviously not through Plague Wind. And it combos obviously with the spell portal. So Plague Wind's only got a 14-inch range, but with the portal, I believe it's 39-inch range. I'd have to double check, because obviously you got the inch gap between you and the first portal, then the 18-inch between the next portal, plus the 40mm base of that portal, and then the 14-inch line you can draw, from that point. So you can snipe characters turn one with a Plague Wind through a portal, which is obviously what I've done to some great effect.
Trace back to the Great and Clean One model.
Yeah, so you pick a point, and then that's
triangle, can't you?
Well, yeah, effectively, and then the point always goes back to the nearest Great and Clean One point on the Great and Clean One, so it's in a straight line between him and the point you pick. Obviously, you can get it through multiple units and your own units if you need to heal anything. It's amazing with the spell portal. I'm glad it's still 70 points because it fits in nicely. Artifact wise, you've got the Muck Talon, which you have to take because it's part of the Munificent Wonders host, which is obviously the new host in the Everchosen book, which gives Nurgle ignore the first point of rend in combat for any Nurgle demons, which is amazing because it effectively makes your Plague Bearers a 4-up save against stuff with rend. And then obviously your Great and Clean Ones are a bit more survivable as well. And the command trait that you get is amazing. If an enemy unit within 12 of that Great and Clean One, the general, rolls a 6 to hit, they take a mortal wound back. So I've had demon princes and stuff run in and kill themselves, and I haven't even activate. They've piled in twice, done their 16 odd attacks, whatever, and killed themselves by rolling too many 6s to hit, which then frees you up to go and fight something else. Again, that combos weirdly with the Witherstave. I've had people ask why take them both, because the Witherstave makes your enemy re-roll 6s to hit. So I'd rather be hit by less 6s, and then it's just there as a fail-safe if they do happen to get a 6 through for the second one.
Especially 6s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, when a Terrorgeist comes in and rolls 3 6s to hit and does 18 mortal wounds, I'd much rather them re-roll that than take 3 mortals back.
I've been I actually get to go to Gristlegore Anonymous council group like 3 times a month. That's why I haven't played Warhammer for so long. It's got nothing to do with the outbreak. It's just Gristlegore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've all been Gristlegored, haven't we? I got Gristlegored.
Well, I haven't, because I make them re-roll those 6s. I'm quite happy to take those Terrorgeists to the face. I mean, with the Witherstave, I've had games where Nagash has charged in. He's rolled a 6 of his big D6 staff, re-rolled, missed. Rolled his sword, bunch of 6s, re-rolled, missed, and then does no damage. You're like,
then did you just take him off in a 1-er with the
then sword? Just take him off in a 1-er with a Great and Clean One,
Yeah. Against OBR and stuff like that as well, it is an absolute joke. Like, there's quite a few armies that really care. Like, all they care about is those exploding 6s for whatever reason.
Yep.
Especially if you debuff them with minus to hit, because your minus to hit from your Plague Bearers doesn't get around exploding 6s, but that does.
Yeah, so if they're like spirit hosts and things, they're looking for those 6s to actually do anything, and then they have to re-roll them all and do literally nothing.
Yeah.
So they're, amazing, but obviously in shooting they still do suffer. The Great and Clean Ones do. The Plague Bearers with the -2 aren't too bothered, but it's you don't. I think with these shooting lists that are going to be coming out, obviously Caradron got some points changes. I'm quite looking forward to see what happens with these. But I know, having played Caradron quite a bit before, when they drop down, if they don't kill the Great and Clean Ones, the game's pretty much over at that point, because you're going to kill all of their stuff the following turn. The little 2-wound bobble men, and once the boat's emptied and all the little bobble men are out, they're pretty much done, because Plague Bearers mod them quite nicely.
Have you played them since they've changed it? Because they've changed significantly in the terms of the way they drop and deploy, and they shoot from the boats and they fly high.
Yeah, so I have only a few times the sort of the last few events. When was the change? I don't know, maybe I haven't played them in a tournament yet. Was it January, the change?
It was quite recent, so it was when the Zinch came out. So I haven't had a chance to play against them yet. So the way that they fly high now and they can fire from the boats and stuff, so they're very different to the old clown car list.
Yeah, it'd be quite nice if they do fire from the boat, because you can get 30 plague bearers around a boat quite happily, can't you? And then kill the boat with all the mortal wound output, and then
flies high then.
Well, if it dies, everything has to deploy in that little hole, doesn't it? Or it's dead.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be much fitting in that hole.
I think one of the things worth noting about the list, which you kind of touched on there, it is way faster than anyone thinks, right?
Yeah, Great and Clean ones move 16. Just, why not? So move 5 plus the wheel for 7 plus the bell for 10 plus your run 16, and you can obviously charge because you've got the trees, so you can effectively get a 28-inch charge off turn 1, which I did at Chris's event back in March, the last event where I charged a catapult, an OBR catapult turn 1 at the back of the board with Rotagus. Guy was like, "You what?" Yeah, 28-inch charge, mate. I'm in. So
they're obviously the fastest Chaos faction, though, aren't they? So it makes sense.
Yeah, there's some Slaanesh units that are a bit quicker. But not that much quicker, though, to be fair, because a lot of it doesn't have run and charge, where obviously all Nurgle has run and charge if there's a tree nearby.
Yeah, because that's what I think of when I think of Nurgle. Like, as fast as Slaanesh.
Gardening, speed, that's all I think of.
Yeah, gardening and being in the odd opponent's deployment zone turn 1.
Well, you've got to remember, it's like a jolly jaunt across the table. And they're all very happy to skip through the garden. I just had this moment when you were talking about the demon keyword in Munificent Wanderers, about Puscoil Blight Lords, and I want to go and write a list.
Well, yeah, because the drone is a demon, so the Puscoils do benefit from it, but the Blight Kings on the ground don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, you just take plague bearers for your core, don't you? And then you take those in the cyst with Great and Clean ones, so you get the run and charge with the bell, and then you've got the bodies, and then you've got Puscoils that ignore rend and bounce wounds back. I'm all over it.
How does move work on the Strange Beastie unit? Is it like 2d6 or 1d6 or a normal move? Or
how does what work, sorry?
The pre-game
move.
Untamed Beasts.
It's just a normal move.
Cool.
I had it in my slaves list. I had 2 units of them. I thought they were really, really good.
Yeah, so the other option was Gutter Runners, or you can take Ungor Raiders, because you can obviously ally Beastmen in as well. So Ungor Raiders are another option, because they get a similar thing.
Are they a D6, so are they a random distance?
I'll have to double check on that one.
Ungors are a normal move, but the D6 ones are really worrying to play with, which is why I asked. It's so much.
A lot of one. Shit.
One, great, cool.
Yeah. Would you get to add the 3 for the bell though? Oh, they're not Nurgle, are they?
They're not Nurgle. And there's no way you can get Nurgle anything, is there? Because Ungor Raiders you can mark Beastmen with keywords, but I believe it's only in the formation, yeah. So you can't even get Nurgle Ungor Raiders. If you could, that'd be amazing.
It's a really strong list. I reckon it's one of the best team event lists in the game.
What, that Nurgle list?
Yeah,
I think it's just
if you can have the spell portal.
I think it's just one of the best lists, because like it was good before, and then you've got points drops, Bellacore, and Munificent Wanderers from the Wrath of Everchosen and Slaves book, which is all recent additions, plus the protection from Alpha Strikes with the Untamed Beasts. But you've still got the bodies, you've still got the Thricefold, and you've gained all this extra utility, and
everyone else has lost realm artifacts as well, and obviously Nurgle has amazing artifacts, so
essentially what you've done is all your plague bearers have got, all your demons have got tankier, you've got a mortal wound reflect to help with the damage output, you've got a piece that now shuts down a key piece of their army, and you've got protection from Alpha Strike. So basically it's the same list with all those benefits rolled into it.
Yeah,
top tier now, right? Isn't it? It's top tier.
Yeah, I think so.
You know.
I think it's one of the strongest lists in the game at the moment.
It'll be interesting to see how it works once we get back into events. It still has some weird one-drop bad matchups that can just gun the great and clean ones off. Once they are all dead, you know, you do lose all your damage. But, you know, if they do spend all that time shooting the great and clean ones, and then you've still got your Plague Bearers left, you might actually be able to tank the game out just on Plague Bearers if you get on the objectives. In some of the scenarios, you're going to struggle. The Scorched Earth of 8 objectives was hard before. That you spend over 1,000 points on your 3 great and clean ones, and now you put Be'lakor in as well, plus your endless spells. You're already at like 1,400 points before you've got your battle line down. Another option with the list is that I've seen people floating around is take the 3 great and clean ones in the formation with the spell portal, and then take 90 Plague Bearers. So you just take 3 units of 30, and that fits in 2,000 points. You don't have the flexible stuff of, you know, Be'lakor, but you do have 90 Plague Bearers, which is no small shift. A problem with the 30s is they do get bogged down quite easily. You just got to tag them with one eel unit on the corner, and that 30 is not going anywhere. And if you can block yourself in, and then you're stuck. If you know, because your Plague Bearers aren't really going to have anywhere to move, and they're just sort of, you know, pinning your own stuff behind them. So I do like the 10s.
I think out of the 2 lists, I think the one with Be'lakor is like, I think, infinitely better.
It will be better.
Yeah, I was thinking then about, like, even if you played Lumineth, you're like, well, Teclis can shut down stuff, but it's just like you then mitigate the damage that Teclis does by stopping him with Be'lakor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, Teclis is going to probably dispel your, you know, either the portal or the vortex. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Nurgle suffers in Magic because it only has +1 to cast from the 2 great and clean ones when they use the dagger, which is why I've put it on both of them, and I haven't taken the flail. There's no extra way to get any other casting, so you're pretty much everything's on 6s and 7s. So
it's always been the challenge with Nurgle is that it's 7 to cast, and it's like that's not that reliable, and the spells are so good. You're like, oh, I really need that spell. Because I always found that when I was running Nurgle, if you have a bad magic phase, it has a massive impact on your turn. But I think that list is great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've been playing it to death now for a year. Now it just got better. So I'm quite happy to you know, get it back on the table. And everything's painted already. It's all sat there, ready to go.
Cool. All right. Well,
you have to do the Untamed Beast.
Oh, yeah, I've got to do the Untamed Beast. Or I just I put another endless spell in, don't I?
No. Okay, so I think what we'll do is that'll wrap up your list, and we'll go into destruction. So Byron, you've written a destruction list.
Yeah, I have. So I was laughing at a few things earlier in the recording. You saying that you didn't want to have too many units and too many attacks and stuff like that, and it's something you try and avoid. And that is very similar to the approach I've taken.
And I put 90 skeletons in my list. Yeah.
So I've taken a list I do think could compete. I don't think it is incredibly strong. It would be incredibly fun, and it would be very intimidating for people to play against. There's also a massive amount of flexibility in terms of you can change a battalion and keep the list the same. If you want a different rule, you can change a battalion and take the same unit multiple times, stuff like that. I'll go through it as I go, but from top to bottom, it is GORDRAKK, the Fist of Gork, who is still incredibly expensive, but he's also pretty hitty, and he's cool because he's on a cabbage. A Megaboss on Warcrusher, who'd be the general, and he's got the Sunblessed armor. I'm in Iron Sun, so that's non-optional, but it's a good artifact. It decreases the rend of enemies by 1, which is just super useful. I allied in a Fungoid Cave Shaman because he's cheap, and he's there because of Suffocating Gravetide, which I'll explain in a little bit. I've got the Iron Fist formation, which is really, really flexible. You can take Gorgrunters, Brutes, or Ardboys, and it's 3 to 5 units. So basically this list as it stands is the 3 heroes and 1 unit for 4 drops, but you could easily drop stuff out to get it down to 3. I don't think that makes it any worse. It may indeed make it better. So it's very compact, both in terms of models, space on the table, stuff like that. But the big idea about this is it just goes mental turn 1, and then you cross your fingers for the rest of the game, essentially. That's it. So if people aren't familiar, GORDRAKK's command ability, unlike the normal Mega Boss and War Crusher, the normal cabbage, he can pick 3 destruction units, so it's not limited to IRONJAWZ. That doesn't particularly matter in this list, but it does have some interesting implications if you want to swap things for a rogue idol, for example, or you wanted to ally in some strange units, like you could put in some Troggers or something like that. It's any destruction, which is really cool, and it's also very unrestricted in terms of range. And the idea is, turn 1, you make 3 units +1 to hit, which is probably both cabbages and the unit of 6 Gore Grunters. So my battle line is 6 Gore Grunters, 10 Orruk Brutes, that's a heavy hitting unit, and then 5 Orruk Brutes. The main reason for this list including them is I have 15 painted already, actually, but I think you could swap Brutes out for Ardboys, or you could take all pigs. It really doesn't matter. They're basically, I'd be powering up 1 unit, and that needs to be pigs because it's faster, and past that point I don't particularly mind, and it's just down to personal preference, really. So you give +1 to hit to the pigs, +1 to hit to GORDRAKK, +1 to hit to the Mega Boss and War Crusher, and then you smash those across the table as fast as possible and try and hit as hard as possible turn 1. You probably turn 1. It's basically all your eggs are in the one basket, which is you want to have less drops than your opponent, you want to go first, and you want to put them on the back foot and then do your best at that point. But I played with a few low drop monster heavy armies recently, and I just really enjoy. They make everything enjoyable. I think IRONJAWZ is a really good army for not having too much of anything to do in one phase, but all of your phases being important. So your magic phase, this has only got a very little one, but it's quite important, and your heroes, command abilities and stuff like that. Your target priority is really important, and it really matters where things are on the table, because you've not got many units and they're not hugely resilient, so they need to be killing the things that would kill them before you start losing the battle of attrition. It does hit like an absolute ton of bricks though. That's basically it. It's quite a compact list. Very few models. What you've got 15, 21, it's 24 models, and still a normal amount of wounds though. It's got a lot going for it. It's 90 wounds, and quite a lot of them are heavily armored. You also get
just for my benefit, because obviously the points I've got on here are the unupdated points, so it looks like it's over pointed. How much does it actually come in at?
Okay, so your brutes go down by 10 points each.
Oh, okay, so you've lost. There's 30 points off, so it's 1990 basically. Yeah. Okay.
So they've gone down a little. What's happened in the book is loads of things gone up by 10 points, loads of things have gone down, and you'll find that maybe slightly annoyingly, if you were taking a lot of Ardboys or something like that, you'll end up 10 points over, but there's normally a way to kind of jiggle stuff around until you're happy with it. That's the list. Anything that can't put up a screen is really going to suffer against it. Anything that does put up a screen or deploys off table, I think that's where you're going to have difficulties, because it doesn't. You've got fly, but it's on something with an absolutely huge base, and the More Crushers, you can use your destruction command ability to let them move, and also I'll explain how the idea of suffocating Gravetide works. In the IRONJAWZ core rules, if any unit takes damage in a phase and they are more than 9 inches away from your opponent, you can make a d6 move with it. So that includes your own magic phase. So the idea is, if you really, really want to get not only in someone's face, but around their flanks or something like that, start the game, you can put a cabbage in the pigs, just tap them with Suffocating Gravetide. Obviously you have to get the spell off, but I mean, that's a risk you're willing to take, and it's only a 20-point spell. Tap them with Suffocating Gravetide, they all get a d6 move, and then your formation, someone gets to make a normal move. Your command ability, someone gets to make a normal move. And the like just the vanilla move on those models. They're moving 9, 10, 12 inches anyway. So you can very easily be, the pigs just get to be 18 inches up the table anyway because the formation, and your cabbages can be 20 inches up the table. And all of those adding a d6 to them makes them pretty effective.
Yes, I played against a guy who used the teleport spell that they've got, and he would damage them with an endless spell and then teleport them 9 inches away, and then they get their d6 move.
Oh, so you can choose to do it in that order?
Yeah.
Okay, that just got better. I think
you need to take a weird knob for that, and then
weird knob shaman for it.
So the IRONJAWZ list I was writing was Iron Sons, and it was revolving around that trick with Ard Boys because they get +2 to charge as well. So
auto in essentially.
But you can also teleport the Maw Crusher outside of 12, and then you can use the command ability to move. So then you can move within 3 and then charge. So there's loads of shenanigans you can do, and Iron Sons have a ability where if they can counter charge with a command point, I believe, with the command ability, so you can basically spend a point to charge.
Yeah, at the end of your opponent's charge phase, if something is out of charge, you can make a charge. That's super flexible though, so I mean, straight up at that point, you would probably change to a weird knob shaman, which rather than you'd have to do some jiggling with points. But you could squeeze him in there, you'd be 10 points over. So just some changing around of your core could change that.
Fungoid's good because he gives you a command point on a 4.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, the list I had in, I think it had a, it didn't have GORDRAKK, it had a idol in it, and it had a Wardock and a weird knob, but it's essentially very similar. So
yeah, it's a really difficult decision where to go with your drops for this list. I don't know what you guys think, but like, there's a 3 or less I feel far safer than 4 or less. Which is, it's just kind of a toss-up at that point what you want to do. You can have bigger core units, but I wanted to have a monster heavy list. You can quite easily, so I took it with the Iron Fist formation. The other one is called
Gore Fist.
Gore Fist, and you go pig heavy, which is quite fun anyway. You save 30 points, so that opens up quite a lot.
Are there other ways to pre-game move, don't they? So
they all get a pre-game move. So the formation I've gone with, you pick one of the heroes of the 3 to 5 units. He gets 2 more wounds, and then from him, in your hero phase for free, you don't spend a point or anything. You can make a normal move with any of the 3 units. The Gore Fist, at the start of the game, all 3 to 5 units of pigs get to make a normal move. So that one's kind of everything goes up, and then the other one is a bit more flexible and you can use throughout the game, which I think my list doesn't make the most of because let's say I choose the champion of the pigs. I mean, I could choose the champion of the brutes. It might be useful, but you might end up separating yourself from the units you want to move anyway, just by definition, because you're going to send one unit off twice the speed of the others, particularly if it's a mounted unit.
And then with the mount traits, you get one for formation and one for just having an army, don't you?
Yeah. So they've both got mount traits. Is it correct that your special character can have a mount trait because Scroll Builder allowed me to?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
It's not an artifact or a command trait, so...
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I really like that. I was excited when I saw it. So the ones I've gone for are Heavian, which is you add 1 to your destructive bulk rolls. So when you roll those dice, you're not rolling 1 more dice. You are 1/6 more likely to get a more wound through when you charge into something, which is just cool. And then the Loudon, I think that's once per game. For 1 combat phase, you kind of pop this ability, and any models within 3 inches of this model are -1 to hit. And the idea is on that first turn, when you do get in, and you're at +1 to your armor save, you're also kind of being debuffed. So your eggs are in the first turn basket, but it's kind of got legs for the rest of the game. But you're going to be at your opponent's mercy if they are very flexible. So screens are probably the biggest issue that I think it would face.
I mean, it is unusual. I think Menan's quite a good mount trait as well, if I remember correctly, but I can't remember what it does. But it's an unusual list because obviously you've got double cabbage and one of them is GORDRAKK, so it's kind of I think it'd look really cool.
Yeah.
It's one of those
GORDRAKK
armies.
hits like a ton of bricks, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Meaning is add 1 to the damage characteristics of this model's mighty fists and tail. Heavy is 1 to destructive bulk rolls. They're all really good, actually. Loudon is the subtract hit rolls, and there's 1 for a 4-up bouncing of spells. And then there's, I didn't take Fasten because I just always take things that are to do with movement, and I tried to be slightly different, even though I've written a first term RAL list, which is not anything I ever do.
Exactly.
2 inches extra move on a Maw Crusher is, they're not the fastest of dragons, so that's really, really good too. And the entire idea of the list is you turn 1, you pop GORDRAKK's ability, you buff 3 units of +1 to hit, they get into combat, and then once you're there, you've done enough damage that you don't need that anyway. To completely flip the list on its head, rather than going with IRONJAWZ, you can make it Big War. And what that adds is Big War gets better and better as the turn goes on. You get points for having units in combat, you get 6 points flat for having GORDRAKK as your general anyway, and you build up a tally table, and at each point you get, like, at 12 points you get +1 to hit, you get a 6-up ward, which is not unuseful at all, you get +1 to wound. So as the game goes on and your units get smaller, they should remain more effective, and rather than spending GORDRAKK's command points to buff these 3 units, everyone in your army is going to have it for free anyway, so you can spend your command points at that point on stuff like reroll 1s to hit or to wound and make things really, really, really reliable.
Because if you swap GORDRAKK down to a normal Maw Crusher, you could then put in a War Chanter, and if you went Big War, it's probably better. Like if you go Big War, to put the War Chanter in, because he gives you it's just such a good ability. It's like for 80 points, they're just nuts. I think you give you +1 damage, don't you, on all the attacks?
Oh, it's crazy. So the biggest reason to take him, if I did take him, I would go Gore Fist, and I'd have 1 unit of 9 pigs, and they would be dialed up to 11 to a million in terms of damage potential.
Be the Spinal Tap IRONJAWZ arm.
Yeah.
Everything's turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Oh god, well, it's just that 1 unit. 9 pigs is a mass amount of attacks. They'd be hitting on 2s and 3s. There's actually a +1 to wound spell if you did take a Big War wizard as well. Sorry, Big War, a IRONJAWZ wizard. So you could be sending guys in there that are 2s to hit, 2s to wound. You have command points coming out your arse with this list as well. The command trait you have to take in Iron Suns is +1 command point. If you had a Fungoid Shaveman, he gets 1 on a 4+ anyway. You've got 1 for a battalion, and you start with 1.
And there's an artifact as well that you can take, which is a staff, which gives you it gives you a command point on a 4-up. You can put on a weird knob, because although you've got a formation, you've only got 1 artifact in your list, haven't you? Because you can't give 1 to the Fungoid Shaman, and you can't put 1 on GORDRAKK. So if you had a normal Maw Crusher, you could artifact that, or you could, with the points you've dropped, put in with some jiggling around, maybe you could put in a weird knob and then give him the staff, so you get 2 chances on a 4-up to get a command point, 1 from the Fungoid, 1 from the weird knob, and then the weird knob could take the teleport spell that gives you a chance on turn 1 to drop the Maw Crusher outside of 9 inches, outside of 12, and then you could spend the command point to move, get within 3, and get like a cheeky charge. So there's loads of options. That's why I really like the IRONJAWZ now. There's all these little tiny tweaks.
Yeah. The real difficulty for me with it is you counter the weaknesses that this army inherently has by, you can either take a very large unit of our boys and then you've got to screen yourself, but it really changes the dynamic of how you would be in the early terms. But if you have the really cool things to add that make you more damaging, more reliable, get more command points, whatever it is, they raise your drops. And I think this list is far more effective at doing what it does at 3 or less, but it's far more well-rounded at 4 or less. But there is a huge difference between either of those. I don't know which direction you'd go in. The piggy formation and the points it saves you also is I think it's a really strong consideration because they all get a move. I'd probably go for like a 9 and a 3 and a 3. Piggy formation plus War Chanter is a very, very scary prospect.
It's a bit like the agony of the choice of, do you go for a big unit that's easier to buff but then has battle shock issues, or do you go MSU and just run them in minimal size units because the formation's flexible enough to have up to 5 units anyway, and then you don't lose any drops. So it's like there's loads of things like do you take 10 brutes or do you take 2 5s? If you take 10, then yeah, it's one buff. But then if you take 2 5s, you can be in 2 places at once. So I think there's a lot of these nuanced little choices. But I think for me, I would just go more drops, more flexibility, and more options than less
So
drops.
like
and
5 drops with a shaman and a war chanter, for example.
Yeah, because I just think that you can, unless you're in a 1 drop, you cannot guarantee that you're not playing someone who's also got a low drop army. And I think that the amount of times that will matter is a lot less than the benefit you get over a tournament, but it's only my preference. I mean, I don't tend to play low drop armies anyway, but I think I think it's just down to the player, isn't it? And I think sometimes the drop is really important because it's the scenario dictates it, but because the army's not particularly survivable, it's a bit of a glass cannon, you kind of have to have that choice, but then I think inherently comes a little bit weaker by having the choice.
It's not anything available in the book to delete screens, really, is there, apart from impact hits, basically
destructive bulking them and getting lucky.
That's another reason to go for the 9 pigs. So pigs get a 4+ mortal wound on the charge, and then you've got your 2 destructive bolts as well. So you do have a chance to wipe stuff out. And obviously, if you can start that cascade in IRONJAWZ, there's definitely a benefit to wiping stuff out, whether it's with your charges or in the combat phase for their special ability. You get to immediately go if you wipe out a unit in the combat phase with 1 unit, you get to immediately go with a unit. Another unit, not the same one. You can't go twice for free. That would be ridiculous. But you can go with another unit, and it's unrestricted. It's just if you did this, you can do that, and it's not like another unit within 3 or another unit fighting the same unit you are.
Again, that's encourage you to take bigger units because then you're more likely to wipe things out. But then your battle shock becomes it's all about the battle shock. Becomes scary.
When that cascade goes though, it's like when that works, it's a bit sort of like dramatic to be on the receiving end of. You're like, oh wow, like and it's just like dead, and the next thing you know, there's nothing left in your army.
You do have the breath weapon from the dragons, which isn't actually too bad. So between
I've never seen it hit in a game.
Really?
Every game I've played against one, it's never hit. I'm just like
you got 2 chances in this one. I think GORDRAKK's is slightly better, but between breath weapon, and then 3 sources of impact hits, you're basically fairly heavily reliant on that. But if someone's screening with something that isn't 20 plague bearers or something resilient, if they just put 10 dudes in the way, you're basically getting those for free. And then you just have to pick to do things in the right order to allow you to charge again if you do wipe out something with destructive bulk. So you could do piggies and then Cabbage to take the last wound off. He gets to charge again. He gets destructive bolt again, and your piggies can pile in. And then I'd give them the 2-inch reach option for that reason. So once you piled in effectively, if someone was 4 inches behind their screen, you still get to touch them with your pile in plus 2-inch reach.
The War Clan book really appeals to me for all the movement shenanigans and things you can do with it, and it's a combat army, and it's an army that has those nuances, and it reminds me when you used to play in like 7th edition, you used to set up the overruns into units to fight with the other unit with the chariots that just do that thing of now overran into the side, then you fight that one, you double up on the impact hits. It's got that kind of feel to it that if like the Matrix aligned and you set it up and you got a bit lucky, you could literally just cascade through half their army without them even getting to roll a dice, which a sick part of me would love to set that up. You know, there's going to be that perfect storm.
At one time in 20 games.
And you just then that'll have such a good sense of achievement that you've set that up and played for it. So it's definitely an army I want to have on the table as soon as gaming gets back. So I think I need now that the changes and everything's in, I'm going to go back to the drawing board because I have to rewrite my list anyway, and then come up with my my quintessential IRONJAWZ army that I'll probably take out at some point to see how it plays.
Do you think Suffocating Gravetide is the best way to trigger that move?
Maybe I don't know. I think there's better choices. I mean, like Dam terrain is obviously the best choice because you get a benefit as well. But it's I think Burning Head gives you something as well. You can do it with that, but I think it gives you reroll 1s to wound as well. So if you're, but I think you have to be near it when you fight. I can't remember, but
you would go rather than Big War as a final question.
I like IRONJAWZ and Iron Sun, so that's where I was. That's where I ended up for the starters. So, but Big War did have its appeal as well. But I think for me it was. I just like the Iron Suns. That was what I ended up with for my first draft. So I mean, it will change as it hits the wild and you play with it and you realise that it's better do this and tweak in that. But what I like about that book is that you can endlessly tweak that list with different formation, different core setups, different character setups, Big War or IRONJAWZ, or endless spell choice, and you're never really going to run out of options. And there are nuances to a list that does the same thing, but that gives you enough choice to mix things up a bit, I think. So
yeah, I'll be playing with it in 2 days time, so I will report back on how
interesting.
it goes.
Right, I think that covers that list, and that'll wrap up the show. So thanks everyone for listening to our tournament lists and first impressions of the General's Handbook. And don't worry, you won't see me with 90 skeletons on the table. It was more of a exercise in in a what if than there will be. So, but if someone wants to take that list out, I'd be really interested to see how it plays out. We will publish all the lists on the blog post, and obviously if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the lists up as well. Obviously they're made with Scroll Builder out of date, so the points are slightly out, but if you use the new points they'll be accurate, and I'm sure Scroll Builder will be updated shortly. We'll also put links to bundles on Element, so if you wanted to buy one of these armies, you can just click through the bundle, put it all in your basket, and then you can get it all painted up ready for tournaments back in the tail end of the year and start smashing some face with it. So and we'd love to hear, if you do that, we'd love to hear from you and your journey and how you found it, and then what you found playing with it and what you would tweak. And if you want any advice, feel free to let us know.
So when you buy your NURGLE army, because we've all said it's the one of the most competitive armies in the game, let us know what you do with it.
Everyone's going to buy it, and then they'll change the rules for Be'lakor and the Magnificent Wanderers, and then everyone's going to rage quit at Christmas. And that's just me joking, by the way. Okay, well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.